Welcome to the episode of Construction Genius. Today, we are joined by Otis Odell, a leading figure in housing development and the national housing sector leader at HED, a architecture engineering firm that's nationwide. Otis has 30 years of experience. He's navigated the cycles of modular construction, and he has brought innovation and strategy to multi-housing projects across the United States. And today in our conversation, we tackle the skepticism surrounding modular. And since Otis is old school when it comes to modular, he has a great perspective about all the ups and downs that modular has gone through. And he shares insights from successful projects that have resulted in 40% faster delivery and improved collaboration between designers, fabricators, owners, and project partners. We also explore how modular can solve labor shortages, address housing demands, and evolve with technologies like 3D modeling and robotics. So stay tuned. We're going to dive into Otis's expertise and his passion for housing as a cornerstone of community and his predictions for the future of modular construction. Let's get right into it. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Otis, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm glad to have you on. You're an expert in a number of areas that I think are pertinent to the audience here. Modular construction is something that's been presented as a solution to the housing crisis, but commercial contractors still have a degree of skepticism over this in terms of its practicality. What steps can construction leaders take to integrate modular methods while maintaining quality and profitability?
Well, you have to want to innovate a little bit, and you have to be prepared to put some work in. Modular, I think, does present a reasonable solution to some of the challenges that we're facing in construction today. And there are some great examples. However, there are also some examples of some significant, say, failures. Katerra comes to mind, where they went all in and just didn't make it. We are doing some modular delivery now on some residential work. It's gone quite well, and we have learned a lot. There is an article I read this morning, Frank, that is about Greystar. Greystar, as a multifamily developer, has invested in their own plant, and they have delivered a project, and they have been able to demonstrate the time saving. And when you can save time like you can, if you approach modular correctly, and that's really important, you have to be able to engage and learn about what needs to be done so that you can make it an effective delivery method. So the Greystar experience resulted in delivering product 40% faster than the traditional method. And of course, what that means is they can start collecting rent 40% quicker. So it takes an understanding, and you have to engage in order to assure your success in the modular delivery methods.
I'm curious because with the Greystar project, I'm assuming that was a ground-up project that was done in an area that was relatively easy to access. Is that correct, or what's your understanding of that?
That's probably correct. I can't recall exactly where it was. I think it was in Pennsylvania somewhere. And you are right about that. You need to have the right site conditions. You need to be able to have space that you can lay down. You need to have the right circumstances all the way around to really work. Yeah. I think that's part of the education that the construction business needs to make sure they understand very well before they jump into it.
So just give the audience a little bit of background on yourself and what part of the overall industry you play a role in.
Okay. So I'm a principal at HED. We are about 450 people across the country. We have 9 offices. We work in multiple sectors, and we work in 9 different sectors. One of the sectors we work in is housing and mixed use. Each sector has a business leader that oversees the practice nationally. My role is the national business leader for housing and mixed use. In our housing sector, we do affordable housing, we do workforce housing, we do market rate housing, we do high-rise luxury housing, we do student housing as long as it's off campus. If it's on campus, it goes to our higher ed group. We do senior housing, and included in housing and mixed use work is hospitality, so hotel work. Then, of course, some of our work is modular. And my modular experience goes way back. I did a project, and so without disclosing too much, I did a project. I did a modular project as a very young project architect in the late 80s. And I have followed modular work, and I've watched the industry go bankrupt and come back and go bankrupt and come back, and all the cycles that it's been through. And it feels like, given our circumstances right now, that it presents a very strong opportunity. I've always been a proponent, and I do understand the skepticism with regard to modular. But anyways, that's a little bit about kind of my role in the practice.
So that's interesting. So having gone through a number of cycles over a number of years, what would you say are the main insights that have been learned that are making it sort of different this time, so to speak, or describe that progress that we've made in terms of modular that makes it a viable system of building in the right circumstance?
I think what's made it even more viable now, frankly, is the challenges that the construction industry is facing with construction costs. It's not the contractor's fault that the costs have gone up so much. It's just that we need to find less expensive ways to deliver and to be able to do it in less time, which equates to dollars as well. The other struggle that the construction industry has, and our listeners will certainly acknowledge this, is labor shortages.
Yeah.
So with 7 or 8 people leaving construction industry, only 1 or 2 are coming back, and it's putting incredible pressure on the contractors to be able to deliver. So I think those kinds of circumstances have made it a more viable delivery method. I also think that enough failure has happened, which is education, right? You have to fail to succeed. And what I think has been learned is the critical nature of the coordination and the collaboration between the design team and the fabrication team. And I think there's been a reluctance, frankly, there, and there still is a bit of a reluctance. We've got to open up and be willing to collaborate, and the architects need to think differently about a product and about the fabrication of a product. And I think they have to demonstrate, the architecture and design community needs to demonstrate that they can bring some expertise to the table. And one of the things that helps the fabricator, in my experience at least, is how can we work to standardize? How can we standardize the unit type that we're building? And that's not always easy. The more you can standardize, I believe, the more square footage you can produce in a day, in a week, right? So you need to have sort of a sympathy or an empathy for the other partner in the scheme here, which is the fabricator. The design team needs to have that sort of careful consideration. And I think that the fabricator, needs to open up a little bit to the design team to see where they can be helpful, and also set it straight from time to time. It's not about designing the next award-winning deal. Modular can certainly be award-winning work, without a doubt. It's just that you have to take a very different perspective. Put yourself in the shoes of the fabricator. I think that's starting to happen with all the failures and restarts and the lessons learned, if you will.
And when you're referring to the fabricators, in your experience, Is it a subcontractor that's doing the fabrication prior to installation, or is it the general contractor? How is that being driven in an efficient manner that is suitable based on the fact that every construction project is geographically unique and many times, in terms of the partners building the project, is unique?
So I think there can be a number of different formats and I'll say contractual structures. What we generally see is that the fabricator is in a location and they have a facility indoors where they have a labor force that is working in great indoor conditions along an assembly line kind of format. And they are generally subcontractors to the general contractor. I have seen formats where the modular company, the modular fabricator, does contract directly to the owner. And a lot of times that might have to do with the funding and the capital and the financing component. I feel that it is best managed by the general contractor so they can control it, frankly. They're used to controlling that kind of thing. Now, it's a very different kind of subcontractor than your typical subcontractor, yet it falls into that category, in my view. It's just, again, having to learn about what idiosyncrasies come with that type of a subcontract.
So it's interesting because, as you spoke of Greystar earlier, they're obviously the owner of the project, and the owner in this case was driving the use of modular to build the project. Isn't that one of the main issues, is that in terms of the adoption of modular, is that the owners simply aren't interested in modular per se? What they're interested in is getting a project built as quickly and as efficiently and as profitably as possible. And so there's no real incentive for them to embrace modular up front when there are other options available that perhaps are easier and more familiar to the people that they're going to be building with.
Well, that's what has really been a blockade for the whole industry. So I think that it is important to start with the owner. The owner has to be interested in, which they typically are, cheaper and faster.
Yes.
Then if we've got experience with a general contractor and a design team that can demonstrate to the owner, here's some case studies. We delivered it 40% faster. The overall cost of the materials and labor was 10% less expensive, for example. Right. So we can demonstrate to you that it's a viable delivery system. Are you in or are you out? Sort of question to the owner, right?
So it seems like that modular is, if it's applied correctly with obviously the support from the owners to the designers to the installers and the fabricators, there is a use for it. Do you see a point in the industry where modular will be more prevalent than traditional delivery methods?
It could go that way. If I had a crystal ball, I'd be able to tell you about that. I feel that in the current environment we're in, unless there's some significant change in speed to delivery and overall costs, that it could find its way to the forefront in terms of a delivery method.
Right. When we think about housing in general, there's definitely a lack of housing. I think of here in California, that it's an ongoing issue. Prices are tremendously high for real estate. And yet there's also a lot of regulations around building that perhaps discourages people from building. It gums it up, to say the least. In your part of the business, how do you navigate these challenges? What advice do you have for construction companies who feel stuck in bureaucratic red tape?
Yeah, that's a good one. We do have several offices in California, and our modular project, by the way, happens to be in California. I think you have to really be informed about the various regulations that are in place. And particularly in California, there's a lot of legislation that you need to stay on top of that can help you streamline the delivery of a project. Everyone, I think, has really recognized the demand and the need for housing in the state of California. It's affordable, it's workforce, it's market rate, it's all kinds of housing is needed.
Yep.
It feels like the political will has started to acknowledge that, and that there's legislation. And I have to stay up with it. Our team has to stay up with it. Our California sector leaders, we're always looking at the legislation that is being signed into law, that is on the table being considered. We advocate for it. I think you just got to be familiar with it. And I think that from the construction side, they sort of follow the steps. And I think that the design team and the ownership team have an opportunity before the contractor, perhaps, depending on format of the structure of the deal, to connect with the authority having jurisdiction and work to understand the opportunities to get through the process quicker, how it can be done. Can you, expedite by paying additional fees? Are there things you can do? We try to understand that along with owners early on so that the information can be passed along to the contractor and we can try to speed things up as much as possible and not be bogged down in red tape.
In your experience, having worked in the industry over the years, what do you think are the biggest positive changes that have occurred that bode well for the future of the industry in terms of the quality of the projects that are delivered and profitability for all partners involved?
Well, I've always worked in housing and I love working in housing. And I've been working in housing for well over 30 years. When I look at it and you ask me what has happened to make it better, I think there are some things that have helped develop more quality construction in terms of how things are detailed and what certain conditions, environmental conditions, have taught us about how to build and how to put things together in various locations. I just have to say that it certainly was a lot easier 35 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to persevere. And I think that the people who have persevered are somewhat like me. They're passionate about housing. They love housing, and they.
Why are you passionate about housing?
Oh, because it's a fundamental need, right? I mean, all the buildings that architects work on, what could potentially have more impact than providing a person with a great place to live, with a place to live in the first place, if their previous home was the street, or if they want to be a part of an experience every single day of their lives where the project is about placemaking. It's about enhancing your experience. It's not a place you go to work every day. It's not a place you go to the doctor once a month. It's not a place that you visit from time to time. It's a place that provides security and home.
Yeah.
It's home. Home is special. And so I think it's just an amazing privilege to be a part of it. And every time I talk to folks and talk about interviews or get quoted, I always come back to, you really can't be involved in housing without being involved in community. And when I talk about housing, I'm talking about, multifamily housing, like the housing project types that I talked about that we do. You really have to be a part of community. It's an integral part of community. Get into a community, understand what their attitude is toward housing and all those sorts of things. I love putting the puzzle together with unit types, unit mix, amenities, all the things that make up exciting places to live. It's just something that really gets me going.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this interview. And I want to talk to you now for 1 minute about the easiest way for construction professionals to stop micromanaging and start leading with confidence. And that is by taking my course, The Shift. You know how to build projects, but leading and developing a high-performing team presents a different challenge. And that's why you need to shift from being a project builder to being a people leader. And my course, The Shift, will teach you exactly how to do that. There's 5 modules. It's recorded online, so you can take it in a self-paced manner. There's no rush. You can take 1 module a week. You can learn, use, and apply the information. There's a ton of bonus materials involved with The Shift that'll help you to get the most out of it. There's a killer deal right now of $197 per seat, and it is 100% money back guaranteed. If you don't get the value that you're looking for from the shift, then you just contact me and I give you all of your money back. So go to theshift.constructiongenius.com to learn more about the course. Take the course, and you will see a tremendous change in the quality of your leadership. All right, let's get back to the interview with Otis. What do you think is the relationship between the nature of American culture at large and people's attitude to housing when you might compare it with other cultures that may be more, shall I say, community driven? America tends to be transactional in nature to a great degree. We live in our homes, but not necessarily in our communities for a lot of people, whereas in other cultures, there is more of a community feel. Am I stating something that you've thought about, or is it not something you think is the case?
I do think about it. Every project has its own unique sort of parameters and characteristics. I think it's particularly important, Eric, when you are looking at urban infill work. There is incredible context, and not just physical context. It's social, it's political, it's emotional. How can the designer begin to connect with those sorts of things in a design solution that does bring people more into community? Certainly, more rural projects have a different flavor and a different sort of way that they would connect culturally. I think it does shape culture. I love working on affordable housing. I am not in favor of taking a particular portion of a community and saying, let's put all the affordable housing there. We really need to integrate housing of all types throughout the community, because that's what makes a place rich. We learn from each other. There are developers who do include affordable units within their market rate units, and there are those that just won't do it. And I think when you do that, you certainly have to set up your property management and all kinds of other operational issues, but that's what makes a place rich and rewarding. Where you connect with people of all types, all income levels, all colors, the diversity makes it be outstanding.
So it's interesting, right? Because when we think about a way a community is formed, the way that communities are formed are often formed on the basis of what people have in common. And some of the pushback that you might get to the approach that you just described is that you're then artificially creating communities where people don't have things in common. And, whether it's economic, whether it's social, even if it's ethnic, and people, they're just not comfortable in those environments, not just the people who might think, no, I don't want those types of people living with me, but, just in general, we like to hang out with people who are like us. You know what I'm saying? And not everyone is the same.
That's very true. And I still believe that diversity is important in our life, in the places that we live, in the places that we experience in our neighborhoods. Certainly take Sacramento, take Denver, take any city over 50,000 people. There's a diverse population. And what this country has done really since World War II is located people based on their economic status.
Yes.
And I think it has led to a less rich and less rewarding overall experience. And I'm sure there would be those who would disagree with me.
Yeah.
I still feel that diversity is important. It was important in my life growing up. I really appreciated hanging out with folks from different walks of life.
Yeah.
I'm from a farm community. I enjoyed the farm life. I also enjoyed the city life. I think all of those different kinds of experiences lead to a much richer education and richer cultural heritage.
Yep. So tell me about, I know in your approach to working in the industry, you see a real power in storytelling and using stories as a means of, as even we're doing now, communicating the value of a particular type of project and the location of the project. Tell us more about how you have used storytelling in your career to move things forward.
Always storytelling. It's always about storytelling. Every project has a story. And we start that really, really early in the process and understand what is important part of the story from the very beginning, before pencil touches paper,
Right.
or in today's world, the computer starts generating images. In any case, it is something that we use every day. We talk, as we get introduced to prospective clients, we talk about what is important to them. It's all about listening, frankly, initially, listening to what they have identified as their goals, their aspirations, what they're trying to accomplish. What we're able to do because of the depth of our experience, and because I've got so many years of experience, we're able to find a similar example or a case study that we could start to reference and tell the story about it so that it resonates with that prospective client and demonstrates our ability to listen and take their thinking and their ideas and their thoughts and work with them to develop sort of the goals, the strategies, so that we get the outcome that they want. We get the results that they're looking for. There's so many examples. And again, every one of them has a different story, and they're all just as important as the next one, really.
How do you, as an expert in your field, maintain that attitude of listening when you're having a conversation with someone and you already know the answer, or you think that you already know the answer?
See, that's the problem. If you think you know the answer, you may or may not. It's a discipline, right? It's very important to listen. And it's really important to ask the right questions so that the potential client has an opportunity to answer those questions and be able to clearly articulate, or more clearly articulate, what it is they're after. So I think it is a discipline. You really have to be patient and listen. We find that a lot of our clients are very smart. They know what they're looking for. They have experience. Now, some don't have as much experience, and then they may look to us more to assist them through things. The folks who have done this before have a brand. They'd like that brand to come true, and they are very, very smart and really can bring ideas to the table that maybe we hadn't even thought of. Frankly.
Yeah. How do you know what the right questions are to ask in the first place?
Well, you do it long enough, and you certainly understand what needs to be known. Have you thought about the unit mix? Is there a market analysis that tells you twos, ones, threes, studios? What's the mix? What are the amenities? What's happening in the neighborhood that already provides an amenity? And what other amenities do you like? Do you think about putting all your amenities in one location, or do you think about spreading them out across the building, and why? I mean, you always want to, at least in our practice, where sustainability and environmental consciousness is part of our DNA, you really want to understand what goals they have toward a sustainable solution and be able to demonstrate how a higher performance building can pay for itself, and be able to go to that conversation once you've asked those kinds of questions.
Yeah, so talk to that, because that's interesting, right? Sustainability is important to many people who are building, but at the same time, it's often perceived that sustainability is going to add additional cost. And that additional cost might be prohibitive and lend someone to go to a different type of model. How do you walk people through that?
It's a very important discussion to have, because almost always you can demonstrate that being considerate around the use of resources and the use of energy and developing a more sustainable solution does pay off. And it's a matter of how long does it take to pay off. And so the question is, are you a long-term holder, Mr. Developer, or are you going to stabilize and trade the asset? So if you're a long-term holder, then you will be around to realize the benefit of the savings. If you're one that's going to stabilize and trade the asset, then you can demonstrate the value that has been added through the implementation and integration of sustainable technologies and sustainable features. It's very difficult to argue with, and it is always challenged because, it's going to cost us more. It's going to cost us more. The residents all want it, and the residents don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, right.
So you have to identify how you can minimize those costs and how you can recoup those costs over time and how that is done. And it's energy modeling, and it gets very technical, but it's important to be able to walk somebody through that because it's real.
Hey, this is Eric, and I hope you're enjoying my interview with Otis. Quick break to remind you about the best construction leadership book available today on the market. And it's my book. Hey, you got to believe in your own book, right? Dude, you need to go out and buy this book. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. And the key to this book here is that you can take the information and immediately use and apply it. For instance, you might have a business development person who is struggling in your company at the moment, and you take them to chapter 11, and you get over 20 pages. 18 pages. You get 18 pages of killer advice for someone who's in business development that they can use and apply right away. See, look, chapter 11, if you're on the video, it's right there. It's really, really excellent. We have over 50 reviews on Amazon, a 5-star average. Read the reviews and then go and buy a book for you and every single leader in your construction company. I promise you that it'll be $20 per book well spent. In fact, it's not $20 a book. It's only $19.99. But wait, there's more. If you purchase 10 or more of the books, shoot me an email. In the email, say, Eric, I purchased 10 or more of your books. I'll reply to your email and I'll say, awesome. Let's schedule a 1-hour Zoom call with you and your leadership team to do a Q&A about the book and a bonus leadership training session. That's a $3,500 value. And at only $19.99 per copy, if you get 10 copies, that's less than $200. That's what's known as a killer deal. All right. So I hope you enjoy my little commercial here. I like shooting these commercials because I'm so enthusiastic about my book. And now let's get back to the interview with Otis. So in construction, which, it's proverbial that it's traditional, slow to adapt, risk averse, because risk is probably the biggest cost in any construction project. From the perspective of an architect and the position that you play in a project, how do you lead a team, including the owner and including the contractors, through an innovative process? What sort of approaches do you like to use?
Well, you need to demonstrate the benefits. If you're
good old-fashioned benefits, eh?
If you're going to innovate, if you're trying to lead someone through, a creative and innovative process, it's important to be able to articulate how that benefits the owner, how it benefits the general contractor, and make that case.
Right.
Otherwise, why would I do it? Right? How is it going to get leases signed? How is it going to make it more constructible? How is it going to do those various things? And I think it's hard work, right? It takes critical thinking, and it takes a little bit of time to work through it and be able to make those points.
How do you work with people? Let's say you're in a project and you have a number of folks who are on board with an innovative approach to either a building method or the way that you're going to structure a deal, and then you have some resistance. How do you work through that resistance from a particular party? Is that something you confront in a group setting? Is that something you take to the side? Do you take a combination approach? How does that work?
Well, I think it's, again, there's no one size fits all for this kind of stuff. I think it's important to engage in a collaboration and have everybody trusting everybody around the table.
Right.
And if there is a window or a crack that's open, that is a possibility that we could do something that's different, has a potential benefit. I mean, back to modular.
Yeah.
And can be demonstrated that it makes sense and you've got the right trust among all the parties. I think the sky's the limit. There may be instances where you would have to pull someone aside and go offline and have
Sure.
a conversation and understand it. Ultimately, all that information needs to come back to the group. It needs to be dissected. It needs to be evaluated. And we got to make a joint decision about what's best for the project. If you can really decide early on that the decisions you're going to make are going to be the best for the project and start to define what that is, right? Then you've got a foundation that you can use for making decisions. We generally like to identify what are the 6 drivers? What are the 5 or 6 drivers for this project that are going to get us to a positive outcome?
Yep.
And if you can start to evaluate different ideas and different thinking around those drivers and they make sense, you have an easier time reaching consensus.
And what are those core drivers in your experience?
Well, they can be all different kinds of things, right? It can be fitting the context. It can be how quickly can I get it leased up? Can we get it built in less than 18 months? It can be, it's got to be a unique place or a distinctive place because of its setting. It really is not something that any one of the team members starts to dictate, but rather something that evolves from initial discussions about the project, and it starts to come out. And all of a sudden you hear some of the same things over and over again. You say, could that be one of the drivers that it's really important to how we move forward here?
Yeah. So that seems to be one of the arts, is with a group of people with perhaps different motivations, is finding those things that are in common and beginning to build the project around those shared drivers, because that will help to overcome some of the obstacles that come up inevitably as you're going through the building of the project.
That's what I was trying to say. You said it better.
I'm curious, though, I'd like you to get your crystal ball out a little bit. And again, I think it's tremendously valuable because of the number of cycles that you've been through and how long you've been involved in modular construction. Where do you see the adoption and use of modular going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's going to find its way into the industry in a bigger and bigger footprint. And here's what I think is happening. I think there is an opportunity for architects to start delivering work differently. Forever, what we have done is identified the task, assigned the number of hours to do the task, multiply times the hourly rate, and we sell professional time. I do believe that with technology and different thinking, that some of what the architect does in the next 5 to 10 years in particular will be more productized, actually. We're going to sell you a subscription to a software program that will give you a lot of what you need. And all of a sudden, we're going to charge you a fee or a subscription, annual, whatever it is.
Who's being charged this fee? Who's the one?
Whoever's buying it.
Buying what?
I feel like...
You mean buying the architectural services?
Yeah, I feel like there is an opportunity for the development community to be able to buy a product that will help them deliver the required documents cheaper and faster.
Okay.
And that it will be productized and that it definitely has a place in the modular world. I think about and there are certain building types that lend themselves to this. It's not just housing. It certainly is housing. It certainly is. Think about the 3-star hotel. I mean, they're already there. They're already doing this with, if you go buy or decide to build or develop a Hilton Home Tree or a Hyatt Place, some of those different kinds of brands, you pay a fee and they give you a set of PDFs and basically all of their standards are there. I
Yes.
think that can be taken to another level, actually.
I see what you're saying.
That it can be further productized so that when you bring an architect of record on board, they can use this product and result in less time and effort, consequently fee, to get it done. And then it can also be a benefit for the contractor because there'll be some 3D modeling already built in and all the contractors are using that format. I think from the hotel business, which is really lending itself now to that type of delivery and type of work, it can proceed into other building types. Think about senior living, where there are assisted living units that are quite similar all the way through.
Yes.
Think about the affordable housing industry, where in some instances there are very standardized unit types. Think about other types of healthcare and patient rooms and MOBs. And think about student housing and the similar.
Yeah.
So I know I focused on housing. I am confident that there are other sectors that can benefit from these types of deliveries. And I do seeing it becoming more and more prevalent in how we see this kind of work being delivered. I see that happening.
So when you're talking about modular, we're not only talking about the construction, but also the design itself. And if we can productize some of the design, then we can then draw the efficiencies out of that and the cost savings out of that, in addition to any cost savings that may come through modular construction itself.
That's right. That's the idea, that we're delivering our work differently.
Yes.
In a different format.
With that in mind, then, when it comes to the construction aspect of it, where do you see the modular construction itself going in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think it'll be continued to be upticked, or will it be just be, in particular circumstances, depending on the owner, the geography, the project partners involved, we're going to use modular? How do you see that?
Certainly there are all these different conditions and situations that will decide if modular is the right solution for the construction side. We're already seeing, there are examples where you're seeing robots start to lay out buildings. So now if you've got this product and you can connect that product with, for lack of a better word, I'll say robot in the field.
Yep.
And can feed them the model and the information, can that be a way to get a project built given the labor shortage in the construction industry?
Yeah.
I've heard of those job sites where there are robots starting to do layouts and certain functions for the contractor. I'm not an expert on that, but I know it's starting to happen, and it feels like it could certainly take a leap in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. So tell us a little bit more about how people can get in touch with you, the kind of things that you're working on now, and how people might benefit from connecting with you on social networks.
Well, so easiest place to reach me is hed.design. You can find me there. You can find all my contact information, my phone number and my email address. I would love to talk to you in any way and help you in any way I can about discussing, an idea or a thought you have about a project. I'm working on all kinds of things. As a business leader, we spend the last month and a half of the year doing our business plan for the following year. We've got that business plan done. There'll be some refinements here in early January. And so there's a strategy piece that I work on, but I also serve as principal in charge on projects. And I make sure projects get set up correctly. I make sure that clients' expectations are met from start to finish. I stay involved in projects as principal from the very beginning. Certificate of occupancy, I'm always there. The clients will have my cell phone number, and I love being engaged in the work. So yeah, and we work across the country. We have offices in Boston. We have offices in California and Los Angeles and San Francisco. And I'm in Denver, where I can get to our market in Chicago and Detroit very easily, actually. Yep. So that's probably the best way to reach me. I'd love the opportunity to talk to you and see what I can do to help you as you think about your next project, whether it be housing or hospitality or student or senior, whatever it might be. We might have some thoughts that would help you get there faster.
That's terrific. We'll have all those links in the show notes. And since you are in Denver, why don't you give us your favorite restaurant recommendation for the next time someone's in Denver?
When you're in Denver, trying to get to Tavernetta. Tavernetta, right at Union Station, just outstanding food and very perfectly located for accessibility.
Great. And we'll have a link in the show notes. It's an Italian restaurant. What's your favorite dish there?
Oh, gosh. Pick one.
Pick one.
Yeah. It's hard for me to identify favorites when everything's so good.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll have a link in the show notes to Tavernetta. And Otis, I do appreciate you joining us here on the Construction Genius today.
Thanks, Eric. Great talking with you.
Thank you for listening to my interview today with Otis. Links in the show notes so that you can contact him. Links to the restaurant in Denver, Tavernetta. I'm just checking it out right now, and the menu looks pretty killer here. For dinner, you can have some killer pasta. They've also got some antipasta, some great dishes there that you can check out, so do so. Also, finally, give Construction Genius a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. I'd really appreciate that, and thank you for listening today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.